So I am Valerie Kinloch, and I open with this question of who will join me? Who will join me in the work of liberation and equity, transformation and freedom? And I ask this question because it comes from poet, educator, activist extraordinaire, June M. Jordan. And June Jordan asked this question, and she asked this question in her poem for South African women that she presented at the United Nations. And she says, "And who will join this standing up? And the ones who stood without sweet company will sing and sing back into the mountains and, if necessary, even under the sea. We are the ones we've been waiting for." And she first presented the full poem for South African women at the United Nations. And when she presented this poem, it was in commemoration of the 40,000 plus women and children who marched, who protested, who resisted racism in South Africa, apartheid. They resisted these Dom Pass laws because it limited the movement of their migrant labor force, and it actually restricted them from being full human beings. And so she wrote this poem in commemoration. It took 30 years for these repressive and oppressive laws to finally be repealed. And I contend that June Jordan's poem for South African women, and the work of these 40,000 plus women and children represent an unwavering commitment to equity and justice, to transformation and liberation, for freedom, and not just for me and for you, for them, their children, their families, their communities, the entire globe, and those people who are yet to be here today. And so I begin with this poem, the words and wisdom of June Jordan. So who will join me? Who will join this? Who will join us on the work of equity and justice in this world? And it takes bold and brave people to join this work, to stand, to sit, to protest, and to advocate for the type of world in which we seek to live in today and tomorrow and into the future. And so I began with June Jordan. And I began with June Jordan because I've been reflecting on the last week and a half I spent in California as president of the National Council of Teachers of English, a 25,000 plus member organization for English literacy and language arts scholars, practitioners, students, schools, and families. This organization represents what I believe is that unwavering commitment to teaching equity, to embodying justice, and to understanding the work that we are here to do on this earth during our lifetimes and after. And so when I passed that presidential gavel and I became past president, I thought of a few things. And I walked toward the stage. And as I walked toward the stage, I started thinking about families and teachers and communities. I am from Charleston, South Carolina. I'm from the US segregated South. I am from a mother who wanted to be a mathematics teacher but didn't have opportunities provided to her. I am from a father who was a retired truck driver and he did not finish high school. I am from a lineage. I am from a group of people, including cousins and aunts and nieces and just sisters and friends. And some of them I call their name, Annie and Dorothy, Jackie and Cheryl. I call their names, Zandria and Debbie. There's a Keisha with the I and there's a Keisha with the E. I call their names, Tootsie Roll, Shannon, my Aunt Tit. I call their names and I remember their lives, and I also remember the life and the work of my mother, who's in her 80s in the segregated South, Virginia. I remember her mother, whom I've never met, who died at a very early age. I remember my father's mother, my grandmother, whom I'm named after, Valerie. And I remember the silences that she embodied. I remember the warmth that she actually held within her arms and in her heart. And I remember the words not spoken and that will never be spoken. So I think about family. At the same time I think about family, I think about teachers. the teachers who poured into me love, the teachers who said, you can do what you want to do, and I will help you to do this work. The teachers who got up every day and walked into school buildings bravely and boldly and said, we will conquer the world, because if you're not free, I'm not free. And how do we do this work collectively? Mrs. Ferguson, Mrs. Glares, Miss Kirkland, Miss Smalls, Miss Green, Miss Brown, Miss Harrison, and so many other Black woman teachers. I call their names. I remember them because I am them, because they are me. And at the same time that I remember my teachers, I remember communities. In this particular instance, I remember my undergraduate alma mater, Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina, a historically Black college. And in that space of Blackness and love and familiarity, I remember my teachers, whether it was Miss Harris or Mr. Bell or my favorite teacher, Donald Major. I remember them because they still remember me. And it was at Johnson C. Smith University where I figured out what it means to be a Black girl growing into a Black woman, committed to the work of equity and justice, even when no one else would join me standing up. I would stand for equity. And it's because of that cultivation of love, the commitment to equity and justice, and not just in name, but in practice, that motivates me to do the work that I believe, as Alice Walker tells us, my soul is destined to do, regardless of who's with me or who's not. And so when I think about their work, I think about their lives, I think about their literacies, I think about their sacrifices, and here I am today as the first Black woman dean of any school at the University of Pittsburgh, here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I think about the challenges that we have to confront on a daily basis as being Black and being woman within an often unforgiving world. And then I walk into classrooms, I walk into schools, I think with other people, I dream a different world, and I wrap my arms around the possibility that we all can live in a better world, only if we will name the things that we love, as opposed to focusing on the things that hurt us. And so what might this mean? And so this screen here is intentionally left Black because it provides a moment to reflect on family, on life, on teachers, on struggle, and on communities. And then it poses the question, well, what is the charge that we have to actually engage in order to do this work? And so I believe that we have many charges. In this case, in this instant, I think the charge is to determine the type of work we want to do, and not just for ourselves, but with other people in many different types of communities that we may have never ever entered or have been invited into, but we need to understand who people are, what people are asking for, and then we move beyond telling people that they should only survive in order to tell people that there is a better way for us to survive and to thrive in an interconnected world where we are all responsible for and with one another. That's my Aunt Tit. That's my Aunt Catherine. That's my mother, Virginia. That's my Aunt Ruth. And when I think about this work, the charge becomes, what is the work you want to do? You're sitting next to someone, and can you see the good in the person sitting right next to you? Do you understand that we all have good in us? So if you can just look to your left or to your right to the person sitting next to you. Can you feel energy that's good? Do you know what the charge should be? And the charge should simply be that what is the good that we should all be after? It's not, why are you good and I'm not good? It is, what is the good that we thrive for? And how do we thrive for the good? By being in this interconnected community. How do we understand equity as not inclusion? How do we understand justice as an unwavering commitment for us to be in a better world with the resources that we rightfully deserve? How do we do what we do in the Pitt School of Education? And that is to ignite learning and to strive for the well-being of all people, regardless of who people are. Who are you? Whose are you? And whose do you seek to become in a better world full of equity, justice, liberation, transformation, love, and all the good things that we should be one with another? And so in closing, what I want to say is this. It takes not just a person and not just one community, but it takes people who are willing to look at each other and say, what is the good that I can help you with? And what is the good that you can help me with? How can we be in community with each other? How can we think about a different world that we probably have yet to imagine, but we can enact if only we can dream that world? And so I offer this as my charge to myself, and I invite you into this charge with me. June Jordan says, and who will join this standing up or sitting down? And the ones who stood without sweet company will sing and sing back into the mountains and, if necessary, under the sea. My friends, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And if you can believe it, and if you could see the good in human beings, we can live in a better, more equitable, more inclusive, more loving world. I'm Valerie Kinloch. Thank you all.